Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Republicans will answer the call. All of us, every one of us, is ready to work with you and our Democratic colleagues on this committee to prove to the American people while Washington is certainly broken, there's a ray of hope, and it is here. It lies with your children. After years of working on this issue with you and others, I've come to conclude the following. Social media companies, as they are currently designed and operate, are dangerous products. They're destroying lives, threatening democracy itself. These companies must be reined in, or the worst is yet to come. Gavin Guffey is a representative, Republican representative from South Carolina in the Rock Hill area. To all the victims who came and showed us photos of your loved ones, don't quit. It's working. You're making a difference. Through you, we'll get to where we need to go so other people won't have to show a photo of their family. The damage to your family has been done. Hopefully we can take your pain and turn it into something positive so nobody else has to hold up a sign. Gavin's son got online with Instagram and was tricked by a group in Nigeria that put up a young lady posing to be his girlfriend, and as things go at that stage in life, he gave her some photos, compromising sexual photos, and it turned out that she was part of a extortion group in Nigeria. They threatened the young man that if you don't give us money, we're going to expose these photos. He gave them money, but it wasn't enough. They kept threatening, and he killed himself. They threatened Mr. Guffey and a son. These are bastards by any known definition. Mr. Zuckerberg, you and the companies before us, I know you don't mean it to be so, but you have blood on your hands. You have a product. You have a product that's killing people. When we had cigarettes killing people, we did some about it, maybe not enough. You're going to talk about guns, we have the ATF. Nothing here. There's not a damn thing anybody can do about it. You can't be sued. Now, Senator Blumenthal and Blackburn, who've been like the dynamic duo here, have found emails from your company where they warned you about this stuff, and you decided not to hire 45 people that could do a better job of policing this. So the bottom line is you can't be sued. You should be. And these emails would be great for punitive damages. But the courtroom's closed to every American abused by all the companies in front of me. Of all the people in America we could give blanket liability protection to, this would be the last group I would pick. It is now time to repeal Section 230. This committee is made up of ideologically most different people you could find. We've come together through your leadership, Mr. Chairman, to pass 5 bills to deal with the problem of exploitation of children. I'll talk about them in depth in a little bit. The bottom line is all these bills have met the same fate. They go nowhere. They leave the committee and they die. Now, there's another approach. What do you do with dangerous products? You either allow lawsuits, you have statutory protections to protect consumers, or you have a commission of sorts to regulate the industry in question, to take your license away if you have a license, to fine you. None of that exists here. We live in America in 2024 where there is no regulatory body dealing with the most profitable, biggest companies in the history of the world. They can't be sued, and there's not one law on the book that's meaningful protecting the American consumer. Other than that, we're in a good spot. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think after this hearing today, we're going to put a lot of pressure on our colleagues, leadership of the Republican Democratic Senate, to let these bills get to the floor and vote. And I'm going to go down, starting in a couple of weeks, make unanimous consent request to do CSAM, do the Earn It Act, do your bill, do all of the bills, and you can be famous, come and object. I'm going to give you a chance to be famous. Now, Elizabeth Warren and Lindsey Graham have almost nothing in common. I promised her I would say that publicly. The only thing worse than me doing a bill with Elizabeth Warren is her doing a bill with me. We have sort of parked that because Elizabeth and I see an abuse here that needs to be dealt with. Senator Durbin and I have different political philosophies, but I appreciate what you've done on this committee. You've been a great partner. To all of my Democratic colleagues, thank you very, very much. To my Republican colleagues, thank you all very, very much. Save the applause for when we get a result. It's all talk right now. But there'll come a day, if we keep pressing, to get the right answer for the American people. What is that answer? Accountability. Now, these products have an upside. You've enriched our lives in many ways. Mr. Zuckerberg, you created a product I use. The idea, I think, when you first came up with this, be able to talk to your friends and your family and pass on your life, to be able to have a place where you could talk to your friends and family about good things going on in life. And I use it. We all use it. There's an upside to everything here, but the dark side hasn't been dealt with. It's now time to deal with the dark side because people have taken your idea and they've turned it into a nightmare for the American people. They've turned it into a nightmare for the world at large. TikTok. We had a great discussion about how maybe Larry Ellison through Oracle can protect American data from Chinese communist influence. But TikTok, your representative in Israel quit the company because TikTok is being used in a way to basically destroy the Jewish state. This is not just about individuals. I worry that in 2024, our democracy will be attacked again through these platforms by foreign actors. We're exposed, and AI is just starting. So to my colleagues, we're here for a reason. This committee has a history of being tough, but also doing things that need to be done. This committee has risen to the occasion. There's more that we can do. But to the members of this committee, let's insist that our colleagues rise to the occasion also. Let's make sure that in the 118th Congress, we have votes that would fix this problem. All you can do is cast your vote at the end of the day, but you can urge the system to require others to cast their vote. Mr. Chairman, I will continue to work with you and everybody on this committee to have a day of reckoning on the floor of the United States Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Today we welcome 5 witnesses whom I will introduce. At this point, I'm going to turn to my ranking member, Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Citron. You said we need to start a discussion. Be honest with you, we've been having this discussion for a very long time. We need to get a result, not a discussion. Do you agree with that?
Ranking member, I agree this is an issue that we've also been very focused on since we started our company in 2015,
Okay.
but this is the first time.
Are you familiar with the Earn It Act, authored by myself and Senator Blumenthal?
A little bit, yes.
Okay, or do you support that? Like yes or no?
We're not prepared to support it today, but
Okay.
we believe that
Do you
section,
support the CSAM Act?
the Stop CSAM Act, we are not prepared to support today,
Okay.
but we
Do you
think
support the SHIELD Act?
we believe that the cyber tip line.
Do you support it, yes or no?
We believe that the cyber tip line and
I'll
NECMEC.
take that to be no. The Project Safe Childhood Act, do you support it?
We believe that.
I'll take that to be no. The Report Act, do you support it?
Ranking Member Graham, we very much look forward to having conversations with you and your team. We
Well, I
want to be
look
part
forward
of
to
the
passing a
solution.
bill that will solve the problem. Do you support removing Section 230 liability protections for social media companies?
I believe that Section 230 needs to be updated. It's a very old law.
Do you support repealing it so people can sue if they believe they're harmed?
I think that Section 230, as written, while it has many downsides, has enabled innovation on the internet, which I think has largely been.
Thank you very much. So here you are. You got. If you're waiting on these guys to solve the problem, we're going to die waiting. Mr. Zuckerberg, try to be respectful here. the representative from South Carolina, Mr. Guffey's son, got caught up in a sex extortion ring in Nigeria using Instagram. He was shaken down, paid money. That wasn't enough, and he killed himself using Instagram. What would you like to say to him?
It's terrible. I mean, no one should have to go through something like that.
Do you think he should be allowed to sue you?
I think that they can sue us.
Well, I think he should, and he can't. So the bottom line here, folks, is that this committee is done with talking. We passed 5 bills unanimously that in their different ways, and look at who did this. Graham Blumenthal, Durbin Hawley, Klobuchar Cornyn, Klobuchar, Blackburn, and Ossoff. I mean, we've found common ground here that just is astonishing. And we've had hearing after hearing, Mr. Chairman, and the bottom line is I've come to conclude, gentlemen, that you're not going to support any of this. Linda, how you say your last name?
Yacarino.
Do you support the Earn It Act?
We strongly support the collaboration to raise industry practices to
Do you support the Earn
prevent
It Act?
CSAM.
Do you support the Earn It? In English, do you support the Earn It Act? Yes or no? We don't need double speak
We
here.
look forward to supporting and continue our conversations.
Okay, so I'll
as
take
you
that
can
as no.
see,
But you have taken, the reason the Earn It Act is important, you can actually lose your liability protections when children are exploited and you didn't use best business practices. See, the Earn It Act means you have to earn liability protection. You're given it no matter what you do. So to the members of this committee, it is now time to make sure that the people who are holding up the signs can sue on behalf of their loved ones. Nothing will change until the courtroom door is open to victims of social media. $2 billion, Mr. Chu. What percentage is that of what you made last year?
Senator, it's a significant and increasing investment. As a
I mean,
private
like,
company, we're not
You
sharing
pay
our
taxes.
financials.
I mean, 2% is what percent of your revenue?
Senator, we're not ready to share our financials in public.
Well, I just think $2 billion sounds a lot unless you make $100 billion. So the point is, you know, when you tell us you're going to spend $2 billion, great, but how much do you make? You know, it's all about eyeballs. Well, our goal is to get eyeballs on you. And it's just not about children. I mean, the damage being done. Do you realize, Mr. Chu, that your TikTok representative in Israel resigned yesterday?
Yes, I am aware.
Okay, and he said, I resigned from TikTok. We're living in a time in which our existence as Jews in Israel, and Israel is under attack and in danger. Multiple screenshots taken from TikTok's internal employee chat platform known as LARC show how TikTok's trust and safety officers celebrate the barbaric acts of Hamas and other Iranian-backed terror groups, including the Houthis in Yemen.
Senator, I need to make it very clear that pro-Hamas content and hate speech is not allowed on our platform or within our company.
Why did he resign? Why did he quit?
Senator, we also do not allow any hateful behavior at work.
Do you know why he quit?
We do not allow this. We will investigate such
My question
claims.
is, he quit. I'm sure he had a good job. He gave up a good job because he thinks your platform is being used to help people who want to destroy the Jewish state. And I'm not saying you want that. Mr. Zuckerberg, I'm not saying you want, as an individual, any of the harms. I am saying that the products you have created with all the upside have a dark side. Mr. Citron, I am tired of talking. I'm tired of having discussions. We all know the answer here. And here's the ultimate answer. Stand behind your product. Go to the American courtroom and defend your practices. Open up the courthouse door. Until you do that, nothing will change. Until these people can be sued for the damage they're doing, it is all talk. I'm a Republican who believes in free enterprise, but I also believe that every American who's been wronged has to have somebody to go to complain. There's no commission to go to that can punish you. There's not one law in the book because you oppose everything we do, and you can't be sued. That has to stop, folks. How do you expect the people in the audience to believe that we're going to help their families if we don't have some system or a combination of systems to hold these people accountable? Because for all the upside, the dark side is too great to live with. We do not need to live this way as Americans.
Thank you, Senator Graham.
Thank you. Let's just continue to talk about Gaza and sort of the future. Let's assume for a moment we can find some conclusion to this war, and somebody will take over the Palestinian file, maybe the Saudi Arabia, the UAE, I don't know, but somebody needs to come in and try to clean things up a bit. Is there a plan to replace UNRWA in the West Bank and Gaza?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So I think Israel's going to be pretty hard over on, trusting this organization after all the abuses that we discovered. So I would encourage you, I know you got a lot to do, to sort of thinking about how could we do this. So when it comes to providing assistance to folks in Gaza, how do the Gulf Arab states, are they contributing anything?
Yes, absolutely. I think you've seen particularly Emirati leadership. They have been critical in leading also for alternative routes into Gaza, helping spearhead the effort to do maritime deliveries, indeed partnering with the World Central Kitchen, which suffered the horrific attack last week. So I think the Emiratis have definitely stepped up. I think they and other Arab nations, and you know this far better than I, so I won't speak to it for too long, but are very adamant about linking their longer-term investments to a viable path to a two-state
Let's
solution.
assume for a moment that Hamas will be destroyed, which I hope and pray it does. Who's going to take over Gaza? Do we have any idea?
As U.S. aid administrator, again, my focus is on the humanitarian.
The only reason I
operations
mention
and
is
feeding people.
Before we invest a lot of money, we need to know a lot of things, like who's going to be on the ground when Hamas is gone. Can we trust them? What kind of partners we'll have? So that's important to me. I'd like to be an investor, but I want to know what I'm investing in. How would you describe the situation in Gaza? Is it, you say, near famine? How would you describe that?
Well, I think as you know, the IPC report indicates that famine conditions are already present in northern Gaza and looming
how many trucks,
for much of the south.
Do you know how many trucks are allowed in to Gaza in terms of food delivery?
Yeah, well, we've had sort of our best 48 hours since the beginning of the war. So I think more than 400 trucks today, more than 300 yesterday. That's after
Before it was around 200, I think, right?
Pardon me?
Before this, it was around 200.
Yeah, I mean, and some days under 100. And to be clear, when we talk about trucks, sometimes we blur a lot of things together. I mean, before the war, as you well know, there were 500 trucks getting in. When we talk about trucks, that's not all food. In fact, a very small percentage of what goes in, relatively speaking, is food. And if you think about all of the destruction of farmland and granaries and marketplaces and people's own stockpiles in their homes, we need to go way beyond even the 500 trucks that I hope we can approach here in the coming days.
Based on what you hear and what your people see, do you think Israel has been using food as a weapon of war?
I think that Israel has not done enough to facilitate the kind of humanitarian access we need to avert the kind of food conditions that we're seeing, to avert famine.
I guess they could always do more. I get what you're saying. But do you think it's been the policy of the Israeli government to use starvation as a tool of war?
Again, what we see is that have been a series of restrictions over many, many months where we, as trusted partners, have tried to describe what the effects of those restrictions are. And again, fortunately, over the course of the last several days, really to week, we are seeing a sea change which we hope is sustained and expanded upon
Well, the State
in the
Department
provision of
said
access.
today they did not find any evidence of genocide.
Pardon me?
Did not find any evidence of genocide on the behalf of the Israeli government toward the Palestinian people. Were you familiar with that?
Did you say the ICJ?
The State Department did
Oh, the
it.
State Department. I'm not tracking determinations of that nature.
All right, so you're like the head of the the aid program we have. I just want to make sure that I understand exactly what you're saying here. Are you uncertain as to what the Israeli policy is toward allowing food in?
Well, what I can describe is engagements with different parts of the Israeli government that have over these months yielded different answers and different results. And what's very important in the last week is that now it appears, again, we're not in the cabinet, but it appears that there's a consolidation of decision-making authority. But to be, again, we have famine-like conditions in Gaza and supermarkets filled with food, within a few kilometers away. So it's incredibly important that the food that is available get to the people who, especially in the case of very young children, we're getting a growing number of reports of death by malnutrition or diseases induced by malnutrition.
So death by malnutrition, let us know what you find. I'm very curious about that. How many deaths you attribute to malnutrition? Can you report to us your findings?
Well, what I can report you back to is the IPC report, which is the gold standard. But what is very, very challenging, in addition, which has in it again the measurement of the circumference of the children in order to show severe acute malnutrition, and then we have the reports from our partners, and I don't have the statistics as of today.
I'll check that out. So I got.
But could I just make one tiny point, which is just
quick.
that even your question about can we have better data or real data depends on access, and so this is where again it's allowing our partners to move around to be not at risk of being targeted, so that they can answer questions of the nature you're describing is important.
I would imagine that's a pretty difficult thing to accommodate for Israel while you're fighting this war, but we'll try to get them to do better. Sudan, real quickly, what's the top line on Sudan? What should this committee know about what's going on in the Sudan?
Well, I'm pleased that the U.S. has appointed an envoy that is engaging with the stakeholders in Africa and the Arab world to try to create a meaningful peace process. But basically, you have two factions that are much more interested in power for themselves than in ensuring that their people have access to food, blockage of convoys that we are funding that could be feeding people who themselves too are facing near famine conditions, particularly in the Darfur area. So it's a horrific situation and a place where we do not have the resources. We don't have the access, as I've described, but even in the places where we have access, because of the drop in our humanitarian budget, we're going to be funding the needs there far less this year than we did last.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Thank you, Administrator. I'm going to turn to Senator Murphy.
Member for cooperating in today's markup a little early to avoid conflict with the joint session. We have a long agenda today, including several nominees who have been listed for the first time and will be held over, as is the custom of the committee. They are Judge Nancy Maldonado, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, Georgia Alexakis, U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, Krissa Lanham, U.S. District Court for the District of Arizona, Judge Angela Martinez, U.S. District Court for the District of Arizona, Sparkle Suknanen, U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, Judge Claria Horn Boom, another term on the U.S. Sentencing Commission, Judge John Gleason, another term on the U.S. Sentencing Commission, Matthew Gannon, to be U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Iowa, David Waterman, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Iowa, and Gary Grimes, Marshal for the Western District of Arkansas. There's also one bill on the agenda to be held over, S-1306, the Cops Reauthorization Act. We'll also vote on 4 judicial nominees and 2 U.S. Marshals. We're hoping to go to the joint session soon. I now turn to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we get to the judges, next week we're supposed to have an impeachment trial of Homeland Secretary, DHS Secretary Mayorkas, who was impeached by the House for failing to do his duties, and it's up to the Senate to do its duty. But apparently what we're going to do is do a motion to table the impeachment process. I don't think he's even been given a summons, and we're going to short-circuit the Senate trial in a way that's never been done in 200-something years. I think there have been 21 people impeached from the House since the late 1797. All of them have had a disposal in the Senate by some form of trial, except one who resigned. But the Democratic majority is going to abandon that. We're not even going to have any debate about the articles. Y'all have decided, for some reason, just to make a motion to table to end it before it starts, which violates every tradition of the Senate. I think it's constitutionally wrong. Just another example of taking the Senate and turning it upside down to get what you want. In 2013, Senator Schumer and Reid started the idea you don't need anything but a simple majority for circuit court judges. That set in motion where we are today on the judiciary. There is just a majority required, that came to head when we were in charge and Gorsuch was filibustered. So the Senate's rule, longstanding rule about getting 60 votes has been abandoned. It started in 2013. Everybody on this committee has voted to change the rules of the Senate to do away with the legislative filibuster, making us the House. Now you're going to take the impeachment process and turn it upside down because you just want to get on with it. You don't want to have a trial about whether or not our border is broken to the extent that the man most recently, most directly in charge should be impeached. Bad day for the Senate, just a continuation of the wrecking ball approach y'all have taken to the institution for political purposes. And we may avoid a trial, but you're not going to avoid the issue. The American public, I hope, in November will hold you and the Biden administration accountable for obliterating our border, for allowing it to be chaos on steroids, for creating a situation where smugglers not only are bringing human traffic individuals in from all over the world, they're also facilitating ISIS. I've never seen a situation at the southern border like this. We're at all-time high of illegal crossings. The terrorist threat to this nation is off the charts. We're on pace, if this continues, to have 3.6 million encounters every year. And December was the highest December in the history of the country. And this doesn't count the gotaways that Senator Cornyn talks about all the time. To say it's chaos is just really not justice. It's criminal, really. What you've allowed to happen is a violation of any sense of responsibility by Secretary Mayorkas to protect our country. He's in charge of Homeland Security. And this is what the FBI director said. While there have been many times over the years where individual threats could have been higher here or there, I've never seen a time where all the threats, or so many of the threats, are all elevated at exactly the same time. And so we have a trial pending in the Senate about whether or not the man in charge of the border should be impeached, and we're going to do a table to motion, a motion to table. We won't even talk about the substance of the articles. We won't even summons the guy. We're short-circuiting the process. The first time in 200-something years we've done this, and you're avoiding a discussion about the most important topic I think many Americans are facing. One of the reasons that I think he was impeached, he has absolutely abused the law on parole. Parole is required an individual analysis. 2 factors would allow you to be paroled into the country: unique humanitarian need or some unique ability you have that would help the country. During the Obama-Trump years, 5,600 people on average were paroled into the country. In FY22, 795,000. I think Mayorkas is violating the statute. I don't believe him when he says you do an individual analysis. Laken Riley, the individual that was paroled in, I don't believe for 1 minute they did an individual analysis on why he merited parole. I've asked for his case file. I haven't gotten anything. The reason I haven't gotten anything, I don't think there's anything to give me, and they just don't want to admit it. So, pretty bad day for the Senate. this will be the norm, I guess. You know, President Trump was impeached twice. I'm not asking you to agree with the impeachment of the House. I'm asking you to follow the constitutional process that's been set up for 200 and something years. When President Trump was impeached twice, we went through the process. People got to argue about the articles, people got to present evidence, and the trial was disposed of, but here. So I want the American people to know, when it comes to evaluating whether or not Secretary Mayorkas should be impeached, we don't have a chance to do that. We're not even going to get to debate the articles. We're not going to produce any evidence. We're not going to have any debate about whether this is legitimate. It is going to be stopped before it starts. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. Never in the history of the Senate has this been done, to table the articles of impeachment before the person impeached has even been served. This takes us down the wrong road. It's the first time ever, and unfortunately, it probably won't be the last. So the impeachment process now is a victim to the Democratic Party's efforts to get results no matter what the law requires. Very sad.
Immigration is an issue that's subject matter of this committee, and most of us understand that the only progress that's been made on it, even in conversation, is on a bipartisan basis. That's why many of us held out great hope for the Lankford effort, which was asked for by the Republican side. Unfortunately, presidential candidate Donald Trump stepped in and said, I don't want that to go forward. I'd rather have the issue in November, and you can blame me for it. I'm blaming him for it. First is Judge Sanket Bolshara, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York. Does anyone wish to speak about this nomination? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar.
Aye.
Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Arono. Aye. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff.
Aye.
Mr. Welch.
Aye.
Ms. Butler.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 12, the nays are 9.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Judge Dina Coggins, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of California. Does anyone seek recognition on this nomination?
Mr. Chair, just briefly,
Senator Butler?
this is my first judge that I had the opportunity, a nominee that had the opportunity to work with from the beginning of her process. She has an outstanding career and incredibly deep and meaningful litigation experience. I think she'll be a wonderful addition to our federal judiciary, and I appreciate my colleagues' support of her nomination.
Thank you, Senator Butler. If no one else seeks recognition, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar.
Aye.
Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Arono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff.
Aye.
Mr. Welch.
Aye.
Ms. Butler. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 12, the nays are 9.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. The next nominee is Eric Schulte, U.S. District Court for the District of South Dakota. Does anyone seek recognition? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar.
Aye.
Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Arono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff.
Aye.
Mr. Welch.
Aye.
Ms. Butler. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy,
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis,
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 12, the nays are 9.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Judge Camilla Teeler, U.S. District Court for the District of South Dakota. If no one seeks recognition, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Aye. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Ms. Butler. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Lee.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Senator
ask that
Cornyn?
my vote be changed from no to aye?
That's, the record
you.
will so reflect.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 20, the nays are 1.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. The next nominee is David Barnett, U.S. Marshal for the District of New Mexico. Does anyone seek recognition on this nomination? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Aye. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Ms. Butler. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
No by present.
No by present.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 12, the nays are 9.
Nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. And finally, we have Clinton Fuchs, U.S. Marshal for the District of Maryland. If no one seeks recognition, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Aye. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Ms. Butler. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
Lips with the Democratic president for two people you believe in that could serve as U.S. attorneys. Since last June, one of our fellow senators, a junior senator from Ohio, has put a hold on U.S. attorneys to protest the treatment of the former president. I hope he'll reconsider. We need good people from both sides of the aisle to serve in these capacities. Senator Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday, we dismissed impeachment charges against Secretary Mayorkas that were delivered by the House, and the rationale by the majority leader was that the conduct in question did not arise to a high crime or misdemeanor under the Constitution. Well, Article 2, I'm not going to bore the committee with a lengthy dissertation, basically accuses Secretary Mayorkas of misleading and lying to the Congress about the status of our situation on the border. If that's not a high crime or misdemeanor, I don't know what would be. We impeached in President Clinton for giving false testimony in a civil deposition involving a civil lawsuit. So what's the concern? That Secretary Mayorkas has been misleading the country and the public and my concern is about parole. I asked him in November 2023, do you do a case-by-case analysis? This is to Mayorkas. Senator, we comply with the law. So there's a file for all 240,000 where somebody determined they met the two criteria, urgent humanitarian need or significant public benefit. There's an individual determination made on all 240,000. I can see that. Yes, Senator. I'm asking for that. So in your opinion, 240,000 people are individually screened and granted parole. You're not blanket paroling people, are you? That is correct. So the bottom line is, what do we now know? That the parole statute requires parole to be limited to two things: urgent humanitarian need for the person, maybe your mother's dying, something going on that's really urgent, or you have a special benefit to our country, which may be you're a witness in a cartel trial. Not just to come into the country on parole because somebody at DHS wants to make you come into the country. So what have we learned? 2 days ago, we learned that the man charged with killing Laken Riley, Mr. Ibarra, was paroled because there was no space in the El Paso detention facility for him. That's why he's paroled, due to detention capacity at the Central Processing Center in El Paso, Texas. That's not a valid reason to parole anybody. So I would argue this is Exhibit A of where the statute and the actions of the Secretary do not match, and the testimony that he gave to the Congress doesn't match. You've decided to dismiss this case without any inquiry, judicial, Senate review, first time in the history of the country, and the argument that you make is that the conduct alleged by the House doesn't rise to high crime or misdemeanor. That is stunningly bad for the Senate, bad for the country, and the only thing left now, I guess, for the American people is to decide this issue at the ballot box. But the Senate, in my view, yesterday went down a path that no other Senate in the history of the country has done, and that is to dismiss charges serious in nature without any really inquiry by the Senate itself. So very disappointing, and thank you for the time.
I just want to add one point. Yesterday could have been much different. The first motion made by Senator Graham.
Thank you. Rather than get in a fight about the Navy, why don't we agree with the following? That the Battle Force Ship Assessment Requirement Report issued said that we need 381 manned ships, 134 unmanned, for a total fleet size of 515, I think, by 2043. General Brown, is that right?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the complete study, but I do know we need additional
okay.
capability.
So I'm just assuming the people who issued this knew what they were talking about. We're on track to have 294 ships by 2030 under the budget proposal. Is that right, Secretary Austin?
Right,
okay.
291,
yep. Okay.
29, and
yeah, right. So we're at 293, and 2030 we're going to have 294. It must be a lot of shipbuilding between 30 and 40. The problem's money. It's not your fault. I'm not blaming anybody. I think this committee ought to look at an OCO account, if you believe the Navy is essential to deterring China, that to come up with a sustainable plan to get our Navy in shape to deter war with China and other places. I think we got to look at sort of modernization OCO. I want to have a bipartisan discussion about to give you the ships and the things you need to win the wars we hope we never have to fight by deterring them. So let's go to Ukraine right quick. General Austin, you said that Ukraine is a vital national security interest of the United States. How that ends, do you agree? That if we lose in Ukraine, pull the plug on Ukraine, we'll send a signal of weakness.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right, Senator. I agree with that.
And General Brown, I'm sure you agree too.
I do agree.
I totally agree. There are people on our side, Senator Collins will tell you, we hear from all the time. Just, you know, it doesn't matter, pull the plug on Ukraine. All due respect, you're wrong, in my view. So I'm going to keep supporting Ukraine. Now, you just confirmed that that we're delaying transfer or stopping transfer of certain weapons like 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. Is that correct?
What I said
Secretary
is
Austin.
that we're assessing
Okay.
where we are right now.
Well, there are media reports that it's happened. Are they incorrect?
That we have made a decision to.
Yeah.
Again, we've made no decisions.
Okay.
We're assessing.
Are you worried that if you make a decision to deny weapons that Israel say they need, that it would send a signal to Hamas and Iran to keep pushing?
Senator, we want to make sure that we're providing the right kinds of weaponry.
Okay. Would you have supported dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, General Brown, to end World War II?
Well, Senator, I think just based on the situation, what are they?
Well, we know. I mean, it's happened. We know. I'm not asking. They did it. Do you think that was disproportionate?
It was definitely.
Well, do you, in hindsight, do you think that was the right decision for America to drop 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities in question?
Well, I'll tell you, it stopped the World War.
Okay. Well, so it had a. Do you agree, General Austin? If you'd been around, would you say drop them?
I agree with the chairman here.
I mean, if we go back in time, says, hey, we got 2 atomic bombs, should we drop them? What would you say?
Well, I think the leadership was interested in curtailing the.
Well, what's Israel interested in? Do you believe Iran really wants to kill all the Jews if they could? The Iranian regime, yeah. Do you believe Hamas is serious when they say we'll keep doing it over and over again? Do you agree that they will if they can?
I do. Hamas,
okay,
but
right. Do you believe that Hezbollah is a terrorist organization also bent on the destruction of the Jewish state?
Hezbollah is a terrorist organization.
Okay, so Israel's been hit in the last few weeks by Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, dedicated to their destruction. And you're telling me you're going to tell them how to fight the war and what they can and can't use when everybody around them wants to kill all the Jews? And you're telling me that if we withhold weapons in this fight, the existential fight for the life of the Jewish state, it won't send the wrong signal? Do you still think it was a good idea, General Austin, to get out of Afghanistan?
I support the president's decision.
Yeah, I think you do. I think it was a disastrous decision. If we stop weapons necessary to destroy the enemies of the state of Israel at a time of great peril, we will pay a price. This is obscene. It is absurd. Give Israel what they need to fight the war they can't afford to lose. This is Hiroshima and Nagasaki on steroids.
Senator Murphy, you're clear. Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Great to see you both. Thank you for your service to the country. It's pretty stunning to me how this country and our allies fail to learn recent history lessons. Those recent history lessons in both Afghanistan and Iraq tell us that there are substantial.
So, Mr. Mossoff, you said 50% of all the new drugs are made in America, is that right, or developed here?
Yes, it's actually more than 50%.
You agree with that, Ms. Ulrich? Okay. Why is that?
So, in very much, it's a great question.
Are we smarter, or what's the deal?
In very much, I believe it has to do with the patent system. In the sense that the United States innovatively took the position, starting from the very beginning of the country, that they would secure next generation technologies and they would protect them as property rights.
So patents are a good thing?
Patents are a driver of economic growth, of new innovation, yes.
Okay, I agree with that. Now, is patent abuse a problem when it comes to drugs?
So there's a lot of rhetoric about whether their abuse exists.
I'm not talking about the words, the actions.
Yes. So it's very difficult to sometimes find actual evidence. So for instance, you see evidence of abuse. Are there some cases? Yes, because in every legal system in every area of life, there's going to be some bad actor.
Dr. Feldman, do you believe there's gaming of the patent system by pharmaceutical companies?
I think there's no question.
See, I'm with you on this one.
You look at I don't think it's sort of finding a needle in a haystack. Everywhere we look, every study we do, we find gaming. We look at drug device combinations. I talked about inhalers. We see the same thing on GLP-1 receptor agonists like Ozempic.
Yeah,
and
so
Wegovy.
I'm with you on that. So I want to keep the patent system in place because it's good. I just think the problem is real in terms of patent abuse, the games that people play, Senator Grassley's, pay to delay, that kind of stuff. So count me in on trying to fix that without killing the golden, the egg laid by the goose. Ms. Ulrich, you talked about PBMs. What percentage of cost do you think could be attributed to them?
I'm sorry, I don't have a number, but I can tell you that, with 80% being controlled by 3 in the vertically integrated entities, that there's extreme market pressure being controlled by those 3 entities.
Okay, so that'd be a good place for us to look to create some competition, right?
I agree.
Do you agree that there's patent abuse in your industry?
Pharma is not in support of anti-competitive behaviors.
Well, that's not the question. Do you agree there's patent abuse in your industry?
Well, I believe that there are controls in place to handle that when there is.
So you don't think there's a problem?
I think that the courts and FTC has the
So
authority
wait a minute.
to deal with that.
You don't think there's a problem with pharmaceutical companies playing games with patents to keep generics out of the market?
I think that the system has the correct checks and balances in place.
So you think
to
it's
deal with
working?
that. I think it's working.
Yeah, well, I don't. Mr. Mitchell, you're on the receiving end of all this. One, I hope the next drug comes along quickly because there are a lot of people like you in different areas of our society depending on Ms. Ulrich. I mean, I'm trying to say new drugs are good, gaming the system bad, PBMs need to be better controlled. Is that a good summary?
I'd say so.
Okay, now let's go to foreign countries. If a drug is a lot cheaper in a foreign country because of government action in that country to subsidize the drug, would you consider that an unfair trade practice, Professor Mossoff?
Potentially, yes. I mean, there's one of the problems with the cost of high drugs in this country is that this is the last country in the world, as far as I'm aware, that drug manufacturers and drug innovators can sell the price in the marketplace at a price that they would seek to sell it at. All other systems have single-payer systems.
Professor, do you consider that a potential unfair trade practice?
Thank you for the question. It could be, yes. I mean, I do think that it is the case. I'm not an international trade expert, but it is the case that.
So here's what I'd like to do as a committee here. Focus on the fact that some countries actually do lower the prices through government action that we prohibit here. For all the reasons you said, that makes our consumers have to absorb more of the R&D. That, to me, needs to be part of the conversation. To me, that is an unfair trade practice. Does that make sense to you, Mr. Mitchell?
Respectfully, Senator, I disagree. I don't think their prices are too low. I think our prices are too high. And the reason their prices are low is, one reason is that we're the only nation in the world that permits drug companies to dictate prices to its citizens. The only nation on the planet. Every other country negotiates. We only began to negotiate this year, and we will negotiate over a total of 60 drugs out of about 4,000. But we should do more negotiating.
Yeah, I understand to a point. The question is what role of the government here? And I'll let you go. I wish you well. What role should the government play in all this is a very important decision to make. And when a country is having governmental policies that make our consumers pay more for the R&D we all need, I'm going to go after those countries. Thank you.
Senator Wade.
Mr. Chairman. Ms. Secretary, I believe the money in this account is about 1% of all federal spending. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And out of that pot of money, we provide security for personnel, State Department officials all over the world, right?
That's right.
Have you ever seen more threats to us than you do today?
we are, Senator, we're operating in an incredibly dangerous
Okay,
world.
so-
We want to be out there.
Right. So it's hard to get out there if you can't get off the compound.
That's correct.
So this is 1% of the federal budget. If you eliminated the entire account, you're not doing anything to balance the budget. We need OCO, in my view, for the Navy, and we need OCO for this account to deal with the threats we face, because the top line numbers, hats off to Senator Murray and Collins, is just insufficient to the threats we face. Do you generally agree with that the amount of money we're dealing with is insufficient to the threats we face?
Yes, I do.
Let's talk about money. In the supplemental, which I supported, there was a provision that allowed, it's called repo, allowing us to go after Russian sovereign wealth funds. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you having good luck in doing that?
We're starting to, and first of all, I want to thank you for that. I think that was a very important initiative. Just today, the European Union came to an agreement to use the interest from these sovereign assets and to be, just be able to use it for Ukraine.
What about the principle?
So the principle's the next challenge, and we're working hard on that. I think here's where we are. My hope is that we can come to agreement at the very least on an arrangement by which the principal would in effect serve as collateral against a significant loan or bond that would free up a lot of money for the Ukrainians.
Count me in, and I think all of us pushing our European allies to go after Russian assets, to open up another front, to hit Putin and his cronies in the pocketbook. So I want to help you there. Do you support Russia being designated a state sponsor of terror?
So this is, I know, an ongoing conversation we've had, and one that...
well, I just got a few minutes, so...
Yeah, so very quickly, look, I think my perspective is this. We have and we're using many other authorities that I think are more clearly applicable.
We'll talk offline. I would urge you to
pursue
do this. We need to send a signal to Russia. We're serious at every level, and they deserve to be a state sponsor of terrorism. I got a list of people that died that's too long for me to run off, and I can't say half their names, so it's just, it's time for Putin to be labeled a state sponsor of terrorism. They've just wreaked havoc. Now let's get to the ICC. Did you reach out to the prosecutor's office about your concerns of bringing a case against Israel?
Yes.
Did you talk about the concept of complementarity?
That's exactly what I talked about, because it's exactly as you said. My understanding of the court's intent.
So I want to, we have a lot of different, I want to thank you. I want to thank President Biden for issuing a strong statement. Your statement was terrific, Mr. Secretary. Senator Schumer was very, very good. I, along with many others, engaged the ICC to engage Israel before you made a final decision. At least listen to them and see if you could find common ground. Again, I want to repeat, they were supposed to be on the ground yesterday. Is that correct, the ICC?
That's my understanding, yes.
And they informed the Israelis basically after the flight left, they were not coming. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
And there was a CNN interview with a prosecutor general announcing the arrest warrant. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, too.
Which was filmed before the flight was due to leave.
I believe that's...
I think that's bad faith, folks. So I want to take actions, not just words. Will you support bipartisan effort to sanction the ICC, not only for the outrage against Israel, but to protect in the future our own interest?
I welcome working with you on that.
Okay. Let it be said that we're going to work together to send a signal to the ICC. What you did was not only outrageous, you destroyed the rule of law as we know it, and you've given, like, Venezuela 9 months. And I've never been more disappointed. We work together to help the ICC against Russia. Ungoverned spaces and rogue nations are the point of ICC, not Israel. So let's talk about the deal. Are you optimistic that the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel is still possible?
I am, and I have to first of all applaud the work that you've done on this over many, many months in helping carry this forward. And I think we're at a point where the necessary agreements between the United States and Saudi Arabia are very well within reach. And of course, we would bring all of this before Congress. But then the question will be, if those agreements are able to be concluded, it still requires Israel to do certain things in order to proceed with normalization.
I've heard the statement, the ball is about to be in Israel's court. Is that fair to say?
That's my assessment, yes.
Okay, so as I understand it, here's what's non-negotiable. Nobody expects Hamas to be standing militarily when this war is over, right? We share Israel's view. They must go military.
We share Israel's view that Hamas cannot be governing Gaza.
Right, and they cannot be a military threat to Israel. We all agree with that. Okay, now, as to the Palestinian future, we were on television last week, and I thought you laid out a pretty eloquent, what's going to happen once the battalions are destroyed? What does the day after look like? Do you believe a military occupation of Gaza by Israel is sustainable?
No.
You know, I have real doubts about that myself. Do you believe that Saudi Arabia and the UAE have the capability, if they have the will, to turn Gaza and West Bank around?
I believe a number of countries could play an instrumental role in, at least on an interim basis if necessary, helping to provide security, helping to provide governance or governance
oversight. It could be a coalition of people. Do you believe MBS is sincere in wanting to normalize with Israel?
Yes.
Do you believe that the Palestinian component is not the establishment of a Palestinian state on day one, but a process that may get to there?
There has to be a clear, credible pathway to a state.
But not the establishment of state on day one.
Well, day one is virtually impossible, but getting to a state in a
That's one of the things he wants. That's one of the things he wants to recognize.
It has to be credible, it has to be clear. In my judgment, we need to have something that's time-bound, and of course, it has to have the necessary security guarantees for Israel.
So you're not advocating any agreement between normalization that would compromise Israel's security regarding the Palestinian file?
No, the whole point of normalization, but also the whole point of the establishment of a Palestinian state is to make sure that Israel's security is better ensured.
I've been over there several times. Senator Collins went. A lot of people here went. I know my time's up. I cannot see a better time than now. The need to come up with a plan for Gaza and the West Bank after Hamas falls, and it will, is real. The opportunity is historic. Do not let this moment pass. To my friends in Israel, I will never abandon your security, but we're going to have to sit down as a world and make some hard decisions. So, Mr. Secretary, I've enjoyed working with you and Mr. Sullivan and the President. I have said publicly, I think this needs to be done on your watch, and I want to say again publicly, as a Republican, I think most of my colleagues would embrace a security agreement between the United States and Saudi Arabia if it would lead to normalization and a brighter future for Israel and the Palestinian people. I believe that is the position of most people on my side of the aisle, and we want to help you.
Thank you, Senator.
This morning.
Thank you.
Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tomorrow, I think we're going to vote on the immigration bill. One thing I would like to point out is that legislation is not required to do most of what needs to be done. It just requires will. So we're going to have a vote tomorrow, and it's just a vote to try to help your side politically on the border. I don't think it's going to work. The average number of people granted parole by the Trump administration and the Obama administration was about 6,000 a year. Now, what is parole? It's executive authority granted by statute that the executive, through the Secretary of Homeland Security, can parole people into the country on a limited basis based on a unique humanitarian need, somebody's mother's dying, or special benefit to the country, maybe a witness in a case. That was used about 6,000 times a year under the Trump-Obama administration. It has been incredibly abused. Since we last voted in February of this year on the bill that's going to be brought back up, 77,000 people have been paroled. There's not any change at all, and it's never going to change. So you could have demonstrated, the administration could have, taking this matter more seriously when brought up by our colleagues. Go back to the statute. You're abusing the statute. You're mass paroling people. You're waving them in. And we found that Mr. Vera, the man who's been indicted for killing the young woman in Georgia, was released through parole, not based on a humanitarian need or special benefit of the country, because El Paso was full. The man that's accused of killing Laken Riley was let go by DHS because they had no place to put him. and he was paroled. That's not a statutory requirement. I am never going to vote for immigration reform until this administration proves to me they're serious about the job they have and are going to change the behavior. And apparently they're not going to change the behavior. It's getting worse, not better. 77,000 people paroled. Once you know that Republicans believe you abused the statute, we're supposed to believe you're going to do something new if we change the law? It's not a law problem. It's an attitude problem. Thank you.
We're checking on this, Senator Graham, but do you believe the Ukrainian refugees were paroled into this country?
I believe that it should be done. You don't rewrite the law. You have asylum. You have refugee status. Refugees have to apply overseas. So if you feel like you're a refugee from a war in Ukraine, you apply for refugee status. You don't use parole. Parole was not meant to become an alternative to refugees.
We're double checking. I'm not sure, and I don't want to make an assertion that turns out to be wrong for the record, but 36,000 Ukrainian refugees have come to the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois under two conditions: a sponsoring family, and second, that they're given a work permit when they arrive. I will tell you those people have been folded into the economy of the Chicago region without incident. I don't think there's any press reporting about their presence. I think it's the right thing to do to offer people who are refugees in a war an opportunity to come to the United States. We did it after Vietnam. We've done it with our allies among the Kurds. I don't think it's an unusual circumstance in history. So I don't think that this necessarily tells the whole story.
Well, if I may, you're talking about A and I'm talking about B. I support raising the gap for refugees. We had a meeting about it. You know, it's like 125,000. I supported raising the cap. You have to apply for refugee status overseas. And there are people, I'm sure the people you described in Ukraine were very worthy of being refugees. I'm not talking about refugees, I'm talking about parole. Parole is being used in a way the statute never contemplated. It's being abused. And here's what I don't get. After one of the people you paroled illegally, Mr. Beer, killed a young lady in Georgia, they're continuing to do the same thing. So I support refugee programs. I support asylum that's applied correctly. I don't support mass abuse of parole. And from the last time we took the vote to now, things are worse, not better. Thank you.
We've checked. They were paroled. Ukrainian refugees were paroled into the United States under the
Well,
president's
they violated that. They should have been refugees, not parole. You just can't just ignore the law. I guess you can. That's why we're all going to vote no. You can and you are. So there you go.
We're voting on a bill which was characterized as a bipartisan bill. I hope it will be on the floor. So Senator Schumer wanted to be here to make an introduction, and I am going to read his statement. Unfortunately, he was called away at the last minute, and so I'm reading Senator Schumer's statement into the record.
Thank you, Member Graham.
Thank you. Let's go back to the resources. Do you need more money?
Senator, listen, there isn't a single branch or a single agency in the executive branch that that needs more money. Everyone would take more resources. We've had a great relationship with the Department of Homeland Security, the Office of Management and Budget.
Do you feel constrained to ask for more resources by anybody?
No, sir, we don't. And actually, we have a great relationship with our appropriators and obviously the authorizing committees, and they have always looked out for the Secret Service.
So I would encourage you to think big when it comes to resourcing the department in light of what happened here. At the time of the shooting, the Iranians were threatening high-level American officials, including President Trump, right?
Senator, it's widely known.
Right? FBI?
Yes, Senator. That's 100% correct.
Did that factor into the security footprint?
So, Senator, what I will say is that it is widely known that the Iranians do not like us. I would refer you to the National
Well, it's not
Security.
that they don't like us. They threaten to kill certain people, and they named them.
Correct, sir. But I can't publicly
It's
comment.
not like, I hate America. I'm going to kill these 3 guys.
Right. I cannot publicly comment, sir, on.
Well, they publicly comment on it. I mean, it's not
But
what.
Senator, what I'm trying to say is I cannot publicly comment on what intelligence, but I can assure you that we do a threat-based protective model.
I'd like to have that model provided to the committee. Could you do that?
Yes, sir.
Could you also give us the protocols that are in place to secure a site like this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. One, the protective detail around President Trump, I know them all very well. They're brave men and women. And these questions is not to belittle anybody. They're trying to find out how the system fails so badly. You say you're not reluctant to ask for more money. What do we need to do to make it easier to hire people without lowering our standards? I mean, I know it's a hard job. Can we do anything to help you?
So I think we're willing to take that back, sir. I think we're working on our time to hire.
Well, if you had more people, you'd have more time off.
That's true, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
well, let's get more people, more time off. These are tough jobs. I mean, people on this committee know.
Yes,
I don't
sir.
know how they hold a family together doing what they're doing. It's the military really on steroids. The encrypted app. Paul, can you tell us about these apps? Have they been broken into? The guy had some apps that were encrypted.
I think we've experienced a range of returns on this. Some of the applications that he was using online were encrypted in nature. Some of the email accounts.
Have we broken into them?
We've received returns. There are some that we have not been able to get information back because of their encrypted nature.
Is there any way to solve that problem?
Sir, Senator, we've talked about this before. We need a solution that provides lawful access to law enforcement.
So you're telling me the guy that took 8 shots at the president, former president, has apps that we can't get into that may, if you could get into, reveal some relevant information?
That is correct, Senator.
So if he were talking to some foreign power, and I don't think any foreign power would hire this guy, by the way, so I'm not overly worried this was some great plot by the Iranians because they couldn't even think of this. However, there could come a day where something like this is very important. How do we solve this problem?
Senator, as we've been saying, we need a solution that provides lawful access where when we go to a company...
You're telling me, I agree with you, I'm not blaming you. We have encrypted apps of an assassin, a murderer, and we can't get into them all these days after. That needs to be fixed, folks. I'm all for privacy, but to a point. What if, in the future, somebody's using these apps to communicate with a foreign power? I think we need to know these things. We need to know them in real time. So lessons learned is that everything failed. Corrective action, seems to me you need more money and more people. Accountability. At the end of the day, how many people do you think will be relieved of their duties, Mr. Rowe, because of this?
Senator, I publicly cannot, and I cannot weigh in on that right now, right? It has to be a fair and neutral process.
From a fair point of view, would you say this is a major system failure at every turn, and those in charge of the system in question, not only was it embarrassing, they failed?
So, Senator, again, if there were policy violations, those individuals will be held accountable, and they will be subject
Just send
to our
us the
table of
policies
penalties.
if you could.
Yes, sir,
Thank
we
you.
will. But they will be held to our table of penalties, which will include up to termination.
Thank you. Each witness, start with you, Ms. Berry. Do you believe it's very difficult now for Jewish students to attend colleges in America?
I think it can be for individual Jewish students.
No, I said, is it?
It depends on the individual students
Well,
and what they're
okay.
encountering, yes.
Rabbi, do you think it is?
Yes, almost impossible.
Ms. Stern?
Senator, it depends on the campus. For many, absolutely so. But I would also add one other thing.
that if there are some Jewish students who are anti-Zionists, whose Judaism leads them to that position, and they are also getting
Mr. Stern,
spat on.
I'm trying to establish a baseline. The reason we wrote the letter is because we see playing out before our eyes just an assault on Jewish students in colleges. I'm looking at systems here. Does anybody, let me ask you, the DNI said Iran, we have observed actors tied to Iran's government posing as activists online, seeking to encourage protest and even providing financial support to protesters. Does anybody doubt that? Okay. Mr. Stern, is it Hamas's goal to destroy the Jewish state?
Absolutely. Hamas
Is it Hezbollah's goal to destroy the Jewish state?
Absolutely.
Is it Iran's goal to destroy the Jewish state?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Berry, do you agree with that?
I think these are complicated questions. I
No,
really
it's
don't want
not.
to talk
There's
about
nothing
the foreign
complicated
policy.
about it. That's the
Yeah,
most ridiculous
Senator,
testimony ever given in this committee.
Yeah. So
if you think it's
all of those-
complicated to figure out that Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran wants to kill all the Jews, I should not listen to anything else you got to say.
Okay, may I, Senator,
and I won't.
if I may,
Rabbi,
Senator?
Rabbi,
I think we started.
do you believe that Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran are out to kill all the Jews and destroy Israel?
I believe they're out to destroy the Jewish state and kill all the Jews. both.
Okay, so I do too. And I believe Iran's behind this. And what I would like this committee to do is deal with the systematic problems that exist regarding what's going on American colleges today. What's going on in colleges today, there's an organized effort to intimidate, harass, and physically assault Jewish students. What's going on today is an effort on multiple fronts to wipe Israel off the map. This is not an academic discussion. As to what should happen, Mr. Stern, if a student on a college campus uses the N-word against African American or students, should they be expelled?
I think if a student goes and harasses another student, says that to their face, that could be absolutely a matter for discipline. However, I think if they're just standing up there with a sign or saying, this is what I think, or a word I'm choosing, and not threatening somebody and not harassing, then that should be deplored, but it should not be the subject of discipline.
But do you agree with me if African-American students are being called the N-word and harassed and belittled by other students, those students should pay a price for that?
I think if there's any type of harassment, doesn't matter the word.
Yeah.
But if the students are being
Well, the word
harassed,
does matter if you're African American.
Well, what I'm saying is that no harassment should be tolerated.
Well, right,
that way.
there you go. That's good. So the idea that you could hold somebody accountable for using words makes sense to me, because free speech is a concept that we all hold near and dear, but words start wars. Words can incite violence. You can't yell fire in a theater. So what I would say that's going on here is that we have to deal with the problem at its roots, first identifying it. America has many problems. There are people hateful to each other. That's been with us since there's been a country. We live in a unique moment in America, I think. And I'm trying to get us to focus on that moment about not only a rise of anti-Semitism, but an effort by agents of Iran and other powers to divide us here at home. What's so sad is that October the 7th was designed to destroy the reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Israel. All the intel shows us that Iran struck Israel in such a vicious way to stop the reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Israel. I believe that with all my heart. I don't want them to win. I want to normalize between Saudi Arabia and Israel. I want a better life for the Palestinian community. And it can never happen without Hamas being destroyed and never coming back. It can never happen without Hezbollah and Iran being contained. It can never happen without security for the state of Israel. So what I would say, without any hesitation, that what's going on in America on our campuses is worthy of a discussion all of its own. We need to get to the bottom of it and start holding people accountable who run these schools. Thank you.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Let me start by agreeing with